has a direct line sight. Now we have to process the line position, location, and travel. The operation line signals is getting into processing now. What we have to recognize this particle system as streaming is basically how to form our own shape of our anomalies into consolidarity. This comes into positions how you see yourself in a carbon base, silicon base, delta base, alpha base. I mean, these are radio signals, waving line screen location, converting line position, echo sonar, anything of translucent, thermal, X-ray, or modification of radiation. Your formation setting and grounds is a high line set location system. Setting lines of travel and direct lines of panel. Okay, so we're going to start off with the void because that's where you guys are going to come into, the void itself. Now, particle setting, line condition setting, we're going to start in convergence. 12 lines of rotational lines, okay, 24 lines at grounds, 24 seconds in settings to 2,000 lines, 400 lines of setting is square roots, square screen, square pi. Processing that direct lines communication setting. Now, if you're on the modification of the road, it's kilometers. If you're in the yards, you're in feet, position, location, walking lines, and distance. So you'll catch on very quick in that position information setting. But what you have to process in position is your particle streaming. How to come into the consolidarity, what kind of base are you going to put yourself into? Crystalline through its antimantle, which is equicoolants, ground lines, lines, position, location, measuring scales, the balance out location, your compass that puts you in position, location, your systems. Your coolants operation system, your temperature readings, your barometers, and your thermometer readings, which you have to process in that position. Okay, it comes in all process line, direct lines, how you use the sands of time. All right, so we get position lines of calculation. So we're going to start off with lines of void, and then we come to securing lines. Now, particle separation lines of grounds. Set position here. Okay, just line dots. These are all transits in your system of calculations. We call these channel marker waves, okay, instead of operation. Start with that setting. Particle lines, phase recognition right away. See, point lines graph knows exactly where it's in, position lines of direct lines in position and directory that process lines in north, right, south, and east travel. So the converting setting process position location system, right, through cells. These are cells, modifications. See the face already coming in, right? I don't need to structure it because it's already particleized and setting of central lines of operation it's sent to interface. Because I've always interfaced line position because I've always lived inside the eye lines. Your body lives in the eye lines. You want to take pictures? That's how you identify where your body is. From the earth to the space. Two different projections, same operation. Okay, so dirt and ground lines, process that position, you come in your bridgings. Now we'll go through the bridging line signals. We'll just get you an understanding how to process first into consolidarity. So each line bridge has a direct line signal that gets positioned with system, creating a map system so the body knows exactly where it's going in its seconds, minutes, hours of its day in flux of communication. All right? So as it's going around, it's morphing itself in line signals. Now, this process, the void itself, which is an open space, which is mind moderate the system lines of travel that converts a line communication system, a void line operation lines of set position to travel communication to a system off the calculation. Directing ground centers, high state location setting, converting lines, you know exactly what you're doing because it's already done through creating. That process, that position location system, all through tractions, face recognition. Done, right? Now, once the particle system knows you through face, you start to see its face in particle setting and streaming itself. So I'm just going to speed up the anomalies. Now, then we work with the inside lines of travel, okay, which is another face. See, there's the face. So we platitude centers operates the signals. Okay, we convert the lines travels directing ground center position operation server location system and position lines of calculation through set lines of travel communication and setting face recognition. All right. So we got two recognition of face, inside lines, outside travel. Okay. All right. So once we understand the particle system, then we get the grounds. Okay. Moditude 3 centers, fortitude, latitude, longitude, and streaming location of travel. Okay. That modifies line ground centers. Then we get split lines of anomaly of space and time and set position of operation. Processing that position locations, we had door signals, in flux location lines of parameters locations. So you work with everything through red. Red central lines, red and core centers, directing in positions, plateaus, setting line, operation lines, and window frames that travels into correlation graphs of communication setting, all through angles. Okay? All right, so we work with inside line communication and set lines of travel. Okay? Now, outline center, remember, this is just red. Okay, we're going to go around the system, around the outline centers, creating the communication setting. There's your Earth. That's your Earth. That's what you're working with. Now, that's on one security perimeter parameter. Process line, direct lines. You got to work with inside lines, creating position of structure line, which is the grounds and set lines of travel. Working with the grounds, going with the powers, going with the atmospheres. The process line, position, location, setting, and the traffic location of system. Center operate the system. Now you go through web and system. The clocks, the seconds, minutes, hours, and frame. Okay, and set position of operation itself. Start with 12, and then you go through 24. Okay, setting position of its operation system. All through its Earth rotation. There's your Earth. Travels in direct lines of location, right? Face recognition right there inside. Face recognition inside. Inside face, outside structure. So there's two perimeters in line position location. So that's one Earth line, one chakra system. That's one chakra. One chakra. Say hello. That's the chakra system of your security. Okay, now once you come into that, what's next? What's next? The protection, right? Securing, you're securing, you're protecting, and nurturing yourself. So each one line connections. Now, the blue one goes around the system. That spectrum of outline lights goes around the spectrum. Okay, not inside line position. Okay? Okay, so it's protecting everything of security itself, which is two-face recognition. One outside line condition, that is the void. An inside position, which is you. Inside line rotation, which is your system of travel. Okay, and that process lines, line signals. And again, you go through the grounds. You're merging in position lines of travel, directing in position lines of operation. Okay, working with that settings. And you can go on this side and travel communications, both directions and set lines of sync. Okay, setting the structure of design line. Okay, so this basically gets you understanding how you see two tablets of two timeline centers in position of process lines of two buildings, both in set lines of all communication setting, both sides and lines of travel of communication. Inside calculation your SIM. There's your SIM, right? Bring your SIM line inside travel. Okay, so it gets more complicated. This is the basic understanding how you merge all your chakra systems into one line, so it's one simulation graph. So we process the center, we process the crossing angles, in direct lines, in flights over lines of ground set lines of sequence, platforms over travel. That puts all position, location, setting. Then, once we get the structure line, then we go to the next level, which is everything that become in position is creating the rainbow, all right? So each particle system has to have a consolidarity first, the line signal. Once it gets a line signal, then it merges the set lines, integrates and setting, interflux, interconnect, interlace, line connection setting, lattice line, operation line, and set position, operation, set position, location of travel. So we convert the system into orange. Now orange could be anything through an open window, coming to consolidarity. Okay, so I'm just going to fast track locations and directions. Start with that setting. Window frame and travel communication. Okay, open window, all right? And then we process line connection setting. Let's speed up the normal locations. Let's get into green. All right, so coming in pixelation now. Parallelizing your settings, your TV reception lines, broadcasting your system. Okay. So I'm creating pixels around the structure of the schematics lines of the SIM. Okay. So I'm just going to show you three colors of rotation lines of grounds. Okay. It's amazing when you understand living inside the eyes itself through the bodies of Earth and space at the same time. But there's two projections of you in set lines of operation. Okay. So working with that line centers, you put the outline setting, which is the fencing system that protects everything on the inner line condition setting, the process you and face friction time frame that you process line position location, because the simulation itself is putting everything in position of balance of what you're putting travels of travel communication of direction. Okay, and set lines of calculation. Right. So once you get into that, we come into hard lines of coloration lines of pattern. Okay, so we set energetic wall pattern, pink line and lines of center operation screen locations. Converting lines, security lines of value, that volumes its mass and travel. Okay, center ops, directing line, ground centers, and sequence lines of panel. Okay, so it's really interesting when you look at it when it travels on its own line operation, right? So you work with that in all different levels of travel. Okay, 4-dimensional doors, 2 panels, 1 line rotation, offline center, in ceiling operation signal. The process you've indicates the system. Door handles come in and travel, directing grounds, and void. Set position here, set position here, set position here, and set position here. Okay, four doors of rotation setting. Process line and direct lines of grounds and flux location setting and travel. So working with the inline rotation line connection setting, emerge the set lines of different coloration lines of pattern. That process lines pixelation graph, the process calculation ground lines of sequence. And that position, location, and measure and scales, we come to green. Okay, process line directions and locations, process line signals and line connection setting, process lines of window frames, travel point lines graph, operation signals into ring graph screen location setting, box centers, and triangulation position of window lines of travel. Okay. So you can convert to that position locations, but again, you have to start with the grounds. Start with the grounds because you're constantly creating a simulation of simulation of simulation. All through setting, all through operation. Okay, going with the 45 flux of angles. Okay, creating the grounds, right? Now, processing that position and locations. Now, I'm just merging position, the void, security, and the blue merged in one. That's 3 lines of indication setting. The process simulation itself that protects every location setting, like operation cycle, location setting, the perimeter, the parameters. The process communicates to its proxy. It open all channel operation location and screening and position location measure. The calculates and ground lines. The simulation line position of dimensional square roots. The process communication lines, electrical line, grid lines, operation lines, and signal. All through operation setting and travel. Okay, so working with outline centers, we go outline scale, which is now the highways. We work with outline rotations, the graph line communication, screen location, adaptation of flux. There's simulation. Okay, that's one box frame. And then we go perimeters, outline rotations, travels 3 centers of grounds of operation setting. Okay, working with lines of yards, meters, and metrics and scale. Okay, process line directions and set tractions. Okay. So, and we'll do it on this line. We'll go on the opposite direct locations in conversion. And then positions, crossing angles, and structure location and travel. Okay? All right, so it's really interesting as you look at it in different angles, but you can actually see what's outside in and outside in, inside out, the simulation itself. And 4 doors inside lines of travel. So you can change it on all different angles and see what you've done inside your system. Inside your Earth, a rotation. So remember, Earth doesn't have to be blue. It doesn't have to be yellow. It doesn't have to be green. It doesn't have to be brown. It can be any color it wants to be, but you have to modify the powers of line, direct, locate, line condition setting, merge in all your chakra system in one set position, one operation. All through the transits, locations and operation lines of travel. Okay, merging everything in position, creating a simulation of your Earth inside. Your simulation. Okay? So it's very powerful when you look at it in all different angles, right? Okay, and then once you have that position line just setting, you have a ground line signals. We're going to process the floor mats because it's open signal. Now we've got to process the ground line set location and travel. So we're going to merge the core centers, directing the position of flux in 3 angles of process line directions. Platforms, indication lines of flux over travel. Converting lines of all signals. Process line direct centers in locations to a floor mat that process indication lines of travel communication. Bring in yards and meters. Set lines of travel, and converting line rotation service. Bring in angle points of graph communication inside the simulation. Okay? Creating a pyramid. Okay? So I'm showing you different angles which you can do in creation lines of setting. Changing measure and scales of communications. Right? But every time you switch lines, it's very powerful stuff. How you see everything outside in and inside the line communication simulation itself. Okay? That's amazing when it travels too. It's pretty incredible stuff. But I'm just showing you how you modulate your system all through Earth. Okay, so that's 3 Earths in 1. Your void, your security, and your plasma. Creating a simulation inside your system. All through directions, all through location. Okay? Now, you got that position lines of panel, then you bring yourself out lines of rotation lines, merging your set lines of travel. Converting lines, bringing your set position operation signals in travels. Okay, so in that line communication setting. Merging inside line, this is you. Bring your aspect projection of your programming. Okay, you brought yourself in, right? So in that position is your outline signals, location setting, process that positions, travels here, outside, inside line connection setting, merging of directions and travel. Okay, your vortex and your vortex here inside position of operation. Okay. So it's amazing how you use your mind imagination and what you can do in travel. But I'm just showing you all this through the Earth and rotation inside travel communication. Right? All right, so that's 3 levels of the Earth. The 3 basic levels of the Earth itself that you modify through creating a simulation system, bringing your position of your settings, your aspect of your programming, your iOS of operation. Okay. Okay. And then you can work on different levels too. You can work on this level. You finish that level, you work on that level. Okay. And you create everything around that through a platform. Okay. So you bring it in and a higher force lines of communication setting to travel. Okay. Base lines, directing line, grounds. Start again. Start with the grounds because you're bringing in holographic imaging, right, of yourself. Which is because if you don't, you won't have a platform to land on. It's got to have a line position of a grid or anything location of a bridge to travel through. So there's the bridge, okay, in set position, right? Then you put yourself on the bridge in set lines of travel, okay? This is you on the bridge, okay? And then you bring your partner in, your friend, whatever you want to bring in, all right? Okay, you're talking to each other through telepathy. Back and forth, okay, set position, right? So you can move on to that. You can modify that line, stay with that running operation system, and move to the next level of travel, okay? Which is process your location setting to your solar system. Working with your solar system and travel. Directing line signals, operation lines like calculation grounds, operation lines positions, so it's set in the calculation line connection setting. Okay, merging lines, direct lines, operation lines and signals, void over lines, rotation, inside calculation of travel. Okay? Work on that line conceptual setting and opposite location of directions of locations. Okay? So it's really powerful stuff once you understand what's going on inside the mind of electrical line grid, line to line communication of its position of its programming. It's amazing how you see it in all different levels of travel as set line operation. Okay? So merging settings of travel has a converting line connection setting. Vortex location here, and set lines of operation, all right? And bring in set lines of operation here. So you're bringing your solar system and galaxy, okay? So bring that triangulation comes in a force line calculation lines called centers, line rotation, surface, and travel. Okay, so it's calculation on line centers, running that system locations, moving to the next travels, avoided location, right? So I'm running 3 ops, running operation lines, connection, off projection all at once. Now we work with the gold, okay? But remember, all this is happening inside the position of black, 3 grounds of settings, void, red, and blue of protection. But look what you're doing. You're creating everything inside the simulation of itself, of operation, okay? So that's how this is all set up inside your system. Okay? That's how you see your Earth. But look at the bandwidth that you have, that you can work with. And it's amazing how you see that. So you got that angle, and then you can keep that running and move to another running system, right? A whole new operating system, right? Okay, so we process that position of force center sequence, tied to 3 line grounds, 42 lights of travel, set crop circle line, direct line connection setting, higher self and set position of operation. Higher self, travel direction timeline, sets course centers in set position and center operation itself, merges in set lines of travel. Okay, now it calculates and modifies in set lines of operation, merges settings, and merging location setting. All right, so the higher self takes over the modulator screens and direct lines and line signals, and modifies the lights of travel communication setting that puts process calculation of grounds. Okay, so that's a moderation setting. Okay, so the higher self is controlling everything of its Earth, of grounds in the sequence, platitude location settings of travel. Okay, okay, so that we go into that position. Now we go into the higher self, into higher line signals, gets out of that position. Now we're in 14 line grounds into the avatar. Okay, so the avatar is processing here, processing here, processing here. Now it's coming in its own set position of its own operation line, setting locations. And once you get that position, you don't have to go back to the void because you're already central setting. It's all on position from 12 to 24. Different levels of set position lines of calculation to clocking. All right. So process lines of grounds and set lines of travel. Process here, directing 3 centers, 4 set lines of measure. Process yards, meters, a spectrum line communication setting of geometry. Set operation line travels, process lines of blue over lines, avatar, setting position at ground centers, operation platforms, and travel communication setting, converting setting, and position lines of space lines anomaly. Operation line signals, sets converting line position of routes and routers and security line defense lines in position locations into Fibonacci rotation spin cycles and travel communication of direction. Okay, working with the avatar. So the avatar controls everything, the position of the atmosphere lines, process depositions, working that line's operation system, in that outline rotation, all through operation setting. There's your Earth. Okay, that's another Earth operation. Okay, so the avatar is working with the power generation lines. Process here and process here and travel. Directing line grounds. Again, the grounds again. Okay, you can do the grounds any way you want, but you have to have platforms of position because you're bringing actual projection location of travels that bring you location lines, position lines of programming, and you set calculations. So right away you can bring another program in. There's you and actual projection of travel. Another program in your system. Okay, so you're running all these ops all at once. Okay, now that process line positions. Now it needs its own ground settings and sequence of platform communication. All right, so it's got its grounds. Okay, now it works at that position of center lines and direct location setting, blue over green, green over blue, and sent lines of travel. Okay, so it indicates the flux line, ground centers of travel, 4 to 2 lights, 4 to 2 travel line communication, converting line connection of lights, sending operation signals in set position of direction of locations and settings, all through Earth and at other conceptual locations at higher levels and frequencies of its anomaly of space and time. Okay, great. So we work with that platform and set travel on 45 angle sent lines of travel. Okay, all right. So once you're done with that, this is what you're monitoring through. This is what you're mind controlling yourself in set position of operation. Okay, how this all works is nothing of its void of operation settings. Process positions of security, process lines of higher self, and positional levels of human residence, in lines of travel in the communication setting, Earth tunnel line rotation with avatar lines of sequence. So that's 3 running ops, so 3 Earths of rotation setting in your tracker system. Running all at once. Okay? So, and once you get into that, it's moving up to the next level in that process. Once you get out of the avatar, then you go into the sim. Now the sim, okay, is based on this. Okay, let's bring in the space, okay? All right, so the sim is overlooking of the Earth itself, right? So once you get directly in line connection setting, you got 3 conversion lines of Earth, process lines of 4 lines, stable location, face from Earth time frame. Process line directions, so red line centers, operation sequence, okay? Then we come into blue, circulation rotations, ground centers, lines of travel. Okay, then we position lines at high center locations, white graph line, rotations, travel communication, converting line, position location, past, present, and future. Process line triangulation, directing lines of 3 lines of flux. Okay, nominating line switch, process lines, market bed, test circuit, contextual heating, platitude lines of operation, lines of travel. Set calculating on grounds, position lines of center operation line, portal line, operation setting, location, travel, 3 converting line, position, location, setting is the calculation. Set calculation line centers, line communication positions, all through its pyramid, and travels in point graph of communication. Okay? Sets position here of operation and line direct centers, sonar lines, echo line, screen location, flux grounds, 3 centers to measure, 4 centers of scale, central line, and position lines of travel. Okay? Set operation lines of platforms, directing in position location and settings, solar generation lights, phase direction and pattern direction of time frame. Setting rainbow screens, platitude here, platitude here, platitude here, operation here, 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 and platform set location echo screen lines, adaptation of processing. Set calculation anomaly line centers, and set lines of sync, and platitude operation lines, and curving the system all through travel. Okay? So what I'm doing now is I'm setting up the sim that can look through the barometers, thermometers, and temperature readings of its high calculations and its compass of its aerial settings, location system from above and everything around. So I have a circulation of the grounds, I got a circulation protection, and lines of white graph lines of snowy graph interference. Now, in that process, in that direct location setting, then you can go into the 4th ground line signals in position location system. The Earth becomes its green formation setting. Okay, and all through travel, all through directions of location becomes the sim. Now the sim modifies everything and looks at everything all through travel, all through directions. Okay, so from that, it looks at everything all at once. So it circulates and modifies line, direct line centers, circulate in position, location, measure, and scale, process line, position, location, triangulation here, triangulation here, triangulation here. There's the bridging operation lines, instead locates and setting, calculate, modify line, position, operation itself. So comes in line, position, location, merges lines of bridging. Okay, inside line, connection, setting, process line, direction, location, system. Process here, okay, inset lines, webbing here, webbing here, webbing here, webbing here, and webbing here, and travel. Okay, cloak and dagger line and rotation creates a dimensional line dome around the system, around the travel, around the directions, around locations. Okay, protecting everything lines in all operation setting. So it's seen everything in all directions of locations. Booyah. So once it understands that, it morphs in its own location of its own travel into all directions. Okay, and then it becomes its own setting of its own oversoul, which becomes its landmass. Okay, which is the next level that you modify through in set lines of travel. Okay. So, getting in that position lines of centers, you come into high position lines of calculation grounds, which is the 4 sequence. Solid generation lines of 5. So that process line, direct line communication setting. You indicate lines of bounce, directing lines in position location system. You ground line centers of red, around signal, location of face. Your ground line communication lines of blue, inside the rotation lines of face, and set in operation, and that position lines of travel. Then you convert the lines of rainbow, inside position of operation itself, okay, in set calculation. All right, so you're making a rainbow into a wormhole. Now that process lines of levels of travel, directing line communication lines of high set position to consolidate area location setting, position lines to customize your location lines, calculate line communication your AI. That's just going to go line rotation, ascent lines of surface and travel. Booyah. There's your rainbow to a portal. Now, when you understand a rainbow through a portal, things get a lot more complicated, all right? Because now you're truly understanding what you're doing is you're bending space. And when you start bending space, everything comes in balance in your set position of operation. Okay? Face recognition. There's the face there, right? Here's the face. Always a face. Everywhere there's a face. Has to be a face because you're protecting your identities of yourself. Merging your settings and all operations into a setting that puts all sight line and direct location lines of webbing, process line direct location setting to your stargates, and line communication setting and position your systems, puts all calculated and modified to your film strip that processes your holographic line ground centers into position operation of systems, all through setting your solar system, your galaxies, your universe, and your alignments, and all that position location revision. So it's very powerful when you come in that positions, all right? And then you can basically work with inside lines, go graph lines. Outside signal, inside graph communication, okay? Fencing the walls to set lines of rotation, protecting everything in set lines of travel, okay? Working outside in and inside out, okay? And again, you bring yourself an observer, watching everything you already done in an equation. Your observer, okay? Great. So there's a lot taken in there, right? Of operation itself. All right, so that's what you have to come into, is create those rainbows in all different angles for travel communication. All right, so that was a lot of fun, the travel. Okay, so there's a lot of settings that you come in modification of. Essential settings and position is you're always protecting yourself wherever you are in that position of operation. Okay, so what you come into position lines, once you understand high lines as that position, you come into 5-line signals. Because you understand the solidarity of the grounds, you understand the solidarity is position, location, and powers, you understand the consolidarities of position, location, atmospheres, highways, galaxy, alignments, universes, and set lines of rotation. Okay, all through setting, all through travel. Okay, different lengths of communication setting all through set travel. Okay, echo sonars, 13 ground centers of sequence, 3 centers of travel. Okay, but everything moves on its own operation setting. All right, you're not shaped until you identify your system and what you're doing in travel. Modify this, modify that. There's a triangulation. Okay, so you start off with this, right? But then you just have to start off with this. So you get a better understanding. That's the triangle. So that has to turn to this. This has to turn into that. So from this to this to that. Okay? Step by step. So that's what your body's trying to get in positions of. Okay, and travel. Once your standard start of medical line rotations and calculation grounds, he comes in the location system. Now, the medical line rotation line position is the mind alteration to its system that processes the existing information setting to its directions, locations, that gets to indications of its intelligence. Okay, that process everything in travel, engaged form and shapes lines of anomaly. Okay, to its atmospheres, lines of levels that gets in position, location, settings. So once you get in that consolidarity, it gets much easier to travel. Okay, and you can line signals and do anything in travel communications of direction. Okay, translucent thermal X-ray. You do whatever you want. So once you get in that position, you merge into the oversoul. The oversoul becomes everything in setting. It just becomes the void now, because you merged everything all at once and set lines of travel. Okay, now you're black. This is the next level. Okay, the oversoul. And then position lines is red. Now you're red, right? So I think you guys get the true understanding what you have to morph yourself into first in set position of the particle system. Okay, and then you're blue, right? So now you're the landmass of the system. Okay, full landmass is everything. So you're not looking at the ocean, you are the ocean. Okay. All right, I think we're getting a better understanding how this all works in coloration, salt consolidarity, and all shapes and lines of anomaly, triangulation box, or anything from position, location, and travel. Converts everything in your system to the balance of calculations. All right. And then you go into green. This is the oversoul now. Okay. Because you merge yourself in outside position 12 and 24. Okay. So it's really interesting how we formulate and simulate ourselves and turn ourselves into an actual rainbow in circulation to an observer that sees everything that's already done, and everything through its equation through various original timeline. So it's converting line position all chakras into one cycle. That's right, guys. So that's 144 chakras into one. And that's one flux lines of 12. That's one flux lines of 24, which is 12 flux lines of grounds as applications, not the ceiling line operation lines of signal. So you get 12 line signals, okay, and ground lines of setting. Okay, and you got 12 line signals above line setting. Setting lines, rotations, and travels, graph here, center here, operation here, process here, direct here, operation here, operation there, set lines, set operation signals, and locations. All right, so you do what you want to do, but you have to identify what's going on with your system of travel and your simulation. There it is. Okay, so it's very easy to see these things, and your fingers help you out too, right? Fingers help you out in travel communication, right? Create everything in structure, bring everything through anomaly, okay, to its building and its operation. Okay? Work with inside out, outside in first, in metric meters of scale, okay? So it looks really interesting here, and then you really process when you bring out the line setting location of the void, the coloration lines, and metaphor line and rotations of travel. Directing inside, outside lines that communicate to its building that structures everything location of the system. Your city. Okay, so marking line grounds. This is where the lights go. Okay, and to the position and to the structure of the buildings. Okay, your holographic city. All right. So it's really trippy when you see it in white and black, but you can see it moving on its own rotation, right? And then you see everything different on a different angle, right? So it's pretty amazing when you start to recognize what's going on with your system inside the guidelines. How you see everything's structure of operation itself, its grounds, its powers, and its atmospheres of its holographic city. Hooah! So a process in here has a direct line link. Here, 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 and here. Okay, like this. It makes it bigger. Okay? So you can see it at all different angles and set lines of travel. I can convert the system on the other side travel of communication and directions. of location. Okay, so there's amazing things that you can do once you understand how to piece this all together in travel. Okay, how to build the holographic structure of your cities and set lines of design. Okay, so, and then you get into your Skynet, right? Your Skynets. Travel's point here, and we're here, line signals, and line communication travel of direction location setting. Okay, there's your Skynet. So everything's set up in the structure of your holographic city that's set design. Booyah. That's just black and white, guys. That's just white and black. Now, when you punch it in, it's really interesting too, because you can outline your signals inside lines of communication. You always have to start with the base, the holographic structure, right? Brings it out, right? Okay, so it's just bringing out the system now, right? Where you can actually see what you created in your mind of imagination. Okay, do the outline signals of the structure of the building. Everything has to be in process of everything of the simulation. Starts with outline position locations and measures everything that you do through travel recognition timeline. Okay? Okay. And also the grounds. So I've just given you an example, which you need to modify through. But this is how you create your holographic city inside the mind's eye of travel communication. Okay? Trippy, isn't it? And then you work with the blue. After the blue, you come into your position and your settings. So everything comes in a rain graph screen. All right, so we're going blue. Blue would be outside. Okay? Blue is never out inside. Okay? Until you stand outside in and inside out. Because that is protecting the structure of the building that outlines everything of its system of travel. Okay? So when you wear holographic line centers of travel of communications, when you wear those goggles, three-dimensional goggles, that's what you see on the window screens of your TV receptor inside your TV. Okay, you see the black, you see the red, and you see the blue. That's the basic to create a holographic city of your system, of your environment. And then you come in your bandwidths. Start with orange. Orange goes outside. So all you're doing is creating a rainbow graph around the system, okay, of operation. Okay, just piecing it all together all through travel. Okay, you see it come together now, right, in color. So you do what you want to do in that line positions where you are in operation. Okay, and you can go a little bit more to the green, right? You can bring in the more highlights of the font of the green itself and travel. Okay, set position, right? So it stand out more, right? And again with the roads. But you see how it's coming in, right? Through simulation. So it's really amazing stuff, what you can do in your mind settings once you get things set up in your system, so your doppelganger can see what it's doing in real time, when it goes in the time frame in real time location, all right? There you go. All done by equation. All right. So it's tricky, isn't it? Trying to understand how this all works. And you do the same thing with your sky. You can leave your sky black, but you got to be careful now, right? You got to actually go in position all levels. Everything has to be connected in one line signal. Okay, so all has to be connected to the void. All has to be connected to security. All has to be protected line ground sends to your plasma. Once you get in position, then you create the rainbow of flux that processes you in mass. Okay? That gets you in positions of balance. Okay? And then you can basically put more protection, gold around it, right? In a box frame and travel. Like that, and setting through a simulation line ground. That processes everything that you 42 lights of travel of communication. Right? So we're protecting 3 line signals or 4 centers of travel. Okay? Crossing angles, flux over screen, okay? But you can actually see what's going on inside and outside of the operation itself, okay? Now, whatever you want to bring out depends on what you want to do. You know, if you want to bring out the actual structure of the building, okay, you bring out the line, position, location, measure, and scale of communication of directions. You can change the structure of the building of operation. Okay, so the building's now changed, right? So this process here, and set position of operation. Okay. And you can do it on this level in travel. Right? You can see it in all different lines of signals of what you're doing, set position operation itself. Okay. So it's incredible once you understand the Pareto force that you can recognize your system in travel communication of direction. Okay, so it stands out of operation itself, right? And you can change the structure of the buildings. Modify here in a higher level of signal of operation itself, right? So I'm just showing you guys how you can change structures of building just by looking everything that you're processing in positions to operation itself and travel. Okay, in directions. That puts everything all together in set lines of operation itself. And position of the inside center. Okay, inside and outside through X-ray. So it's really trippy, isn't it, when you look at it? That void really makes it stand out, I'll tell you. It's amazing stuff once you recognize what you're doing inside your mind, that you're constructing your system of information. Okay? That's how everything is able to see everything through the doppelganger when it sees the body where it's going to be in that time frame. But it's all created inside the mind eye, set position operation of settings all through travel. Okay? Trippy, isn't it? Okay? And you can change the frequency lines of grounds into buildings or structure locations. Okay? But as it comes in color, you can actually see it rotating faster and faster in set position of operation itself. Merging travels of direction of locations. Okay, check this out. This is wild. All different angles. Okay. So it's really trippy, isn't it? There can be people outside looking inside like this. Okay, there's people outside, right? Like this. Okay, so yeah, it's really, you see them outside, but you're looking from inside. Okay? So it's amazing when you recognize what you're doing inside your system, all through your eyes in traction. Okay? It's really trippy, isn't it, when you see an optical illusion? So you have to really understand the construct, how it's all put together in modification. Okay, guys? And all direct lines and set lines of operation itself. Okay? It platitudes everything, doesn't it, through travel? But once you recognize the inside and outside, you can understand how everything's constructed in the system. Okay? Going through things, seeing through things. That's how we see things. We see through things, right? We don't look at things, we look through things. Right? So that's what it is. So when you're looking at a building, you're looking actually at the road. So you're looking beyond the system. Okay, travel. So I just want you guys to understand, and you can see the bandwidth too, right? See the bandwidth, look at that. You can see the layers. You can actually see the layers. Okay. Isn't that amazing? Each layer. All right, so when you bring it in, you can see the wire signatures. Okay, you just keep going, it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. You know? Keeps going and going and going and going and going. Right? It never, never, never stops shaping itself of direction and what it's doing through its locations. All through travel, all through recognition. Okay? Good. That's it. We'll stop there and travel. All right? See you guys in 5. Adios.